There's something deeply primal about working with our hands, feeling clay between our fingers, watching the shapeless lump transform into something beautiful. For Cecilia Holmes, this connection between creativity and well-being isn't just theory, it's her life's journey. Today in We All Need Nature, we are exploring how art and craft can be more than just hobbies. They're lifelines to our mental health. Cecilia's story weaves between nursing, therapy and pottery teaching, showing us how creativity isn't just about what we make, it's about what it makes us. From her pottery workshops at Burscough Community Farm to her classes at Bolton College, Cecilia has witnessed firsthand how working with natural materials can pull people back from the edge of burnout, lift them from depression and provide an anchor in our increasingly digital world. In this episode, you'll discover why the simple act of creating something with your hands could be the antidote to our modern mental health crisis. You'll hear how elderly individuals find community through art, how children remind us to embrace creative freedom, and why those wonky, imperfect, handmade gifts often mean more than store-bought perfection. Whether you're struggling with your own mental health, feeling disconnected in our screen-dominated world, or simply curious about the healing power of creativity, this conversation might just change how you think about art, nature, and well-being. I'm Neil Hickson, and this is We All Need Nature.
My name's Cecilia Holmes. I'm a pottery teacher at Bolton College, and I run pottery workshops at Burscough Community Farm as well. I've also been a therapist. I trained in reflexology and massage, so I also look after a lady who has some paralysis, so I do a bit of both, my art side and my therapy side.
Can you share with me how you became involved in art and what role it's had in mental well-being and things like that?
Well, I started off when I was 18 and I trained as a nurse, so I trained for 3 years, and by the time I was about 24, to be honest, I was quite burnt out from the difficult job that nursing is, emotionally and physically. So I went to art school when I was 24 and spent quite a few years at art school and explored my creative side. Because I've got the two sides. I've got the practical nursey therapy side to me and the creative side. But if I was leaning too far over into my helping and therapy side, I found I got burnt out. So I switched over into being more creative, and I trained as an art teacher after art school. Still mixing and matching both. I worked part-time as a nurse, and I worked in the community doing some pottery. I had a little girl, and it was difficult to make money from it because community projects in those days, we're talking late 90s, weren't as prolific now. So prolific then. So I just couldn't get by on teaching ceramics, and I couldn't really work as a teacher because I was a single parent. So I just did my own art stuff at home, let it die back and just do it as a hobby, did it as a hobby. So scroll forward 4 years ago, strangely enough, I got picked to be a pottery teacher, finally. I think because there's more need for pottery teachers now and crafts is on the rise again. So I've got back into my creative side, teaching it, working at it, but also working at the farm, doing workshops. So I'm really pleased that I've actually come back into my creative side a lot more, and I've taken up painting again myself as a hobby. And I think all those years when I was a single parent, dumbing down my creative side, I think I did suffer with a low level of depression. I was living in London. It was tough going because it's an expensive city and I didn't have much money, and I was working as a therapist from home. So it was isolating and I wasn't doing enough creative stuff. So these days, especially in the last 4 years, I'm a lot happier because I've come back into that creative side of me. I still work 1 day a week as a therapist, but it's balanced now. So that's how it's helped me balance myself as well, because I was always fighting one with the other, this practical therapy side of me and the creative side. And it does help. You can make some money out of being creative, because in the old days, before I got a pottery job, I didn't feel I could just sit around painting at home and then try and sell my paintings. There was always this excuse that I had to make money, and that stopped me doing my creative stuff. Whereas now I do work as a pottery teacher, and I've started doing workshops at the farm. So I've got that side coming in. And it's all linked, isn't it, to... Because, our system is to do with our self-esteem, is to do with our money status. So now I just feel more balanced about what I'm doing. And I am a really creative person in several different ways, and not doing it, looking back now, led to some low level of depression.
In your experience, what are some of the most notable effects that creating or engaging with art has on people's mental health?
It's very absorbing. So we've got the crazy outside world and the world of digital craziness. We've got a lot of phone stuff, haven't we, and laptops, and working on computers. And the art side of it is the polar opposite. So when people come to pottery classes or a workshop, they're very engaged with one thing, and they're using their hands, they're touching something natural, the earth, and they're creating a form, and then they're going on to use colour and painting it. So the process is engaging in a very different way to, flicking through a phone. Or I suppose it's more proactive, whereas we've grown up now, especially the young ones, with something that's inactive, watching the television. You're being fed information, you're being fed entertainment. I suppose
it's more of a passive thing, really, isn't it?
It's passive, yes. So this is engaging and creating something for yourself. And with ceramics, the bonus is that you can make something you need for your house. It's not just sculpture or form, but if you want to do figurative you can do many things with it. So, but it's also got the practical side. So, yeah, it's very absorbing and engaging, and it's textural. So that's the other thing. We work with a lot of flat stuff now, flat screens and phones, and not much texture. So I think that's the part of the brain that needs stimulating, and it is through the workshops. So mentally, I've noticed people just totally relaxing for 2 hours, and it goes really quiet in the class. And it's not because it's an awkward silence, it's just an absorption of what they're doing, and the time passes really quickly for them. So it's a great way to switch off from the world of politics and madness.
I always like it when you see the tongue sticking out the corner of the mouth, because you know that then they are totally absorbed and concentrating on what they're doing. So have you witnessed art bringing people together or helping reduce feelings of social isolation?
Yes, it has. I've had elderly people in my class who live alone, and people who don't have great health, but they've managed to get to the class. And my classes, actually, even at Bolton College, are quite small, so people do end up chatting to each other, and many people are at different levels, so you can, because it's adults, we help each other out, so that forges more connection. And it gets quite lively at times. People throw up topics and everybody joins in, but at the same time they go back to the focus of working on their piece. So if it's a natural process, as time goes by. I have people rebooking and coming on several. The same with the workshops. People rebook once they really enjoy it and find out about it and realise there's no pressure. It's just about playing and experimenting, and there's no exam or anything. Then they just come back for more of that relaxation. So it happens naturally, yeah.
How do you think art enables people to express emotions that they might struggle to articulate in words?
Art is another version of communicating. So sometimes people struggle to say it in words, which they could say visually. So making a piece, even if it's homemade and it's wonky, but you give it to the person that you love, it's touching. It's not a perfect pot. Or people make some really cute things. Like my last workshop, people were making these little men, and it's saying "I love you" on them. And I know it's soppy, but it's also, instead of giving a card, it's somebody spent time making something with their hands and then given it to the person they love and the family. I mean, I did that last year because I was being a bit of a cheapskate. I just glazed loads of pots that had been left behind at the college, and I gave them to my family. I mean, I did the colour side of it, but they were really pleased, and half of them weren't finished very well, but it was just a little pot to put your earrings in. It's very charming, really. It doesn't have to be an amazing work of art that ends up in an art gallery. It's handmade stuff has got a charm of its own. So you were saying about releasing your emotions through what they're making, and people do make what's in their mind. So I've noticed in the classes that the chaps are quite structural in the stuff that they make, and their making of putting together of clay is more thought out. I'm generalising now, and women make lots of pretty things. We like lots of tat, don't we? So there is a difference there between the sexes a bit in the way they approach what they make. Also using colour. Colour is emotional. Each colour has an emotive feeling to it. So, they're literally putting it onto a 3D object. Even if it's not conscious, we're releasing emotions through art. And it doesn't have to be prescribed or worked out very specifically, but it is an expression of yourself. Yeah.
And I think the other thing for me is it's so really we get hung up on what the end product. There's some swans flying over there. Very low swans. We get hung up about the end thing. This thing as being a work of art, or it's some kind of it's got some value and things like that. And that misses the point to me, because to me, it's a lot about the process of doing that is as, if not more important than the end product. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I've noticed that. People come to the workshops at the farm and often they don't pick up their pieces, and it's not because they think it's not good or anything. I think it's actually the workshop itself is the end game. They've tried it out, they've enjoyed it. They might come back next year or try it at some other venue, but it's the actual throwing onto the wheel as well is really therapeutic, because it's wet, it's glistening, and it's turning, and you're making a pot really quickly, and there's lots of sensations there. I mean, I'm thinking of that film Ghost, but that in itself is just a nice experience to try to make a vessel really quickly. I've done it with children at a festival, and they loved it, absolutely loved it. They were so excited. Kids are really spontaneous like that. They're not worried at all about whether it's not perfect. But that is the emphasis I like to make when I'm teaching, is about playing and experimenting, and not about perfect.
As adults, that kind of creativeness and that playfulness where you're not worried about the outcome, we've kind of lost that, and we're just concentrating on the thing, and either ourselves or somebody else judges that object that we produce, but really it's just a vehicle for well-being and for mindfulness.
It is a well-being and mindful task, or it really is, because before you're 6 you just sit down and do stuff. Because I've got a 2-year-old granddaughter. When I do art with her, she starts with the white paper and then it goes onto her hands, and then she's drawing on furniture. I try and limit it. But the art experience with a 2-year-old is not limited to a triangular bit of paper. Now, I mean, we can do a little bit of that at the farm, but it's adults are very tied into, we've been conditioned, and after about the age of 7, we start to worry whether it's good enough. And I think sometimes the schooling system can shut that down as well, that creative stuff. They can teach us something, actually, the little children, just how to get messy and get on with it,
Are there any particular art forms or techniques that you've found to be especially effective at promoting relaxation or reducing anxiety?
I think working with wet clay is fantastic. It's very earthy, obviously, and working with colour is, I've seen that it's very therapeutic. Working with painting on something that's three-dimensional has a very therapeutic effect on people. They really enjoy that part of it. All the aspects really, and then painting on canvas, using colours, focusing on drawing something. Focus is another part of your mind, and it sends you into another space. So that in itself is therapy. Yeah.
So, what advice would you give to people who feel they aren't creative enough to try art as a form of therapy?
I really encourage people just to forget what they were told at school or what their friend did or whatever. And I mean, a lot of people come to me, they say they haven't done pottery since they were 6, since they were at primary school. Well, that's fine. Go back to that time and work up from there. Remember what you were like when you were 6. We used to play, didn't we, with mud pies and oil tar popping, and I used to get really messy. I was a real tomboy. So it's about getting back in touch. If you want to talk in therapy speak, your inner child. And I'm definitely the sort of teacher that I love it when people experiment. So I encourage that, and get free with it. Take a leaf out of the little children's book, and just enjoy. Yeah.
And that's something that has amazed me really about the classes that we've had here and part of our courses, is that the willingness that some people who you'd think wouldn't embrace that idea, the willingness to return to that inner child and do something just off the top of the head. It's just amazed me how engaged that people have been with that.
Yes, they have. And it's obviously something that, even if they've not realised that they need to bring back out of them, it's there. And it's having permission, really, isn't it? And if you're in a group and everybody's having fun and experimenting, then, we are group animals, aren't we? So it doesn't take long to get rid of some of that brainwashing from school. Just enjoying it.
You've got to embrace it, haven't you? Do you see any parallels between the therapeutic benefits of art and those of reconnection with nature?
Yes, it's tied together. Obviously, working with clay is a natural material. At the farm, we have a lot of beautiful plants that make great textures. You can put them directly into clay. The environment itself, I think, really helps by the fact that it's beautiful and we're in nature, is helping. Yeah, because if you're in a sort of concrete classroom, maybe it would be a different atmosphere, quite a dry, sterile, and also the strip lighting, I think it does really help.
So how do you think that creating art can help build emotional resilience in individuals facing some mental health challenges? How do you think that can help?
It can help because they have another go-to activity. As we were saying before, television and your phone is very inactive. It's very passive. This is engaging. You're making a piece of crochet. You're knitting a blanket for somebody. You're creating a pot, and you can think about it during the day, about how you're going to design it. That's what I've been doing now. I'm much more creative in my everyday life. I'm thinking about how I'm going to display my plants at home, and it's very fulfilling. That's what we've been missing with this consumer age, is the feeling of fulfillment. People running around shopping arcades and running off looking for clothes. I always used to think there's something missing, because you don't need any more clothes really. But is it colour and shape and texture that we're missing? So you were saying about mental health, people living alone, knitting and sewing and all the handicrafts that women used to do, they used to do them in groups and chat as well. So they did it naturally, and also had a practical use. People had to wear socks. People needed bed linen mending. There was a purpose to it. It was community. People were talking, but they were also being creative with their hands. That's what's lost, and that's what I think the revival is, this coming back to that, being together. I mean, we are animals, aren't we? We're meant to be together in nature, sitting around. But if we're doing something with our hands as well, it's not just sitting around chatting. We're doing something. We're creating something. But you can do it alone at home if you want to. So that's definitely going to impact your mental health, because you've got something to look forward to. You've got another creative project on the boil, you know.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing with me. It's having something at the back of your mind, so your mind isn't idling on negative things. You feel like there's something positive. You're designing something in the back of your head, or you're thinking, you see a nice art technique, or you see something somewhere, you think, I'd like to try that. And you're kind of planning it out, and it's in the back of your mind. It's almost protecting you from negative thoughts, I think. Anyway, that's how it works for me. You've mentioned about knitting before. I've got one thing which is often a tangent, but my brother's girlfriend used to love knitting socks. And I've got about 10 pairs of hand-knitted socks, and they're the best things ever. They're actually made for me. They were measured to my feet. And I get a pleasure every day when I put them on.
Yeah, and knitted socks are very, very warm. You know, beautiful.
I mean, that just gives me a pleasure every day of putting my nice woolen socks on. So, future vision. If you could design a project or a workshop to support mental health through art, what would it look like?
I try a few different techniques. So, work with the clay, work with colours and canvas, work with the farm materials as well. So we've got a lot of wood here. We've made some nice wreaths as well, because the farm grows willow. So we can, do several things. Use the materials of the farm, but also mix and match. So we can use acrylics and watercolours. I do a little bit of everything, and we don't really need to. Well, obviously, it is great for your mental health, but just the doing of it is the actual mental health release. So I try a bit of everything. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we don't do therapy here. We're not clinicians. We don't do any treatments or anything like that. It's almost like the being here and expressing yourself and doing something like that is the therapy. It's self-contained.
Yes, that's it. We don't have to make that more of a spectacle. It's all part of the process. We can go for a walk. We can do some cooking, because it's quite nice in a polytunnel. Get the camping stuff out and cook. You could make a meal. You could do a whole day project. It would be really nice, and keep moving it on. And you do wooden spoons and chopping wood. You could definitely develop a really nice day or weekend project where people were fully creative for the whole process. Yeah, lovely.
Great. Thank you very much. That's brilliant.
Thanks, Neil.
Cecilia's story reminds us that sometimes the most powerful medicine doesn't come from a pill bottle. It comes through the simple act of creating. Walking through the peaceful grounds of Burscough Community Farm, watching swans glide overhead as we wrap up our conversation, I'm struck by how naturally art and nature intertwine in the healing process. What's particularly compelling about Cecilia's approach and Burscough Community Farm's approach is that it isn't about producing masterpieces for galleries. It's about finding joy in the process, reconnecting with that childlike ability to play without judgment, and building a bridge back to our own well-being. Let me leave you with 3 key insights from today's conversation. First, creativity isn't just about the end product. It's about engaging in an active process that pulls us away from our passive, screen-dominated lives. When we work with our hands, whether it's moulding clay or knitting socks, we're not just making things, we're making space for our minds to heal. Second, arts and crafts can be powerful tools in preventing mental health issues, not just treating them. As Celia discovered in her own journey, suppressing our creative side can lead to what she called a low level of depression, while embracing it can bring balance and fulfillment to our lives. And finally, we don't need to be artistic to benefit from creating. Just as a 2-year-old doesn't worry about making perfect art, we can all rediscover that freedom to experiment, play, and express ourselves without judgment. If you're inspired to explore this connection between creativity and well-being, remember, you don't need to start big. Maybe it's just picking up some clay, joining a local craft group, or simply allowing yourself to play with colours and textures. As Cecilia shows us, sometimes the most profound healing starts with the simplest of creative acts. I'm Neil Hickson, and you've been listening to We All Need Nature. Thank you for joining us, and remember, creativity isn't a luxury, it's a necessity for our well-being.